we like to do on a demo like this is just give you a good high-level overview of what Employee Navigator as its, its benefits, HR, the compliance software. We're going to look at it in kind of two different ways. We'll start with an employee experience. That's usually kind of the most important end-user employee experience. We're going to log in from the very beginning as an employee experiences, entering, registering, and going through an open enrollment process. We'll kind of hit the highlights. We'll talk about the different features, things that are options. We'll kind of guide through that whole experience, and then we'll log out and come back in as an admin, as administrator, so we can see what the back end looks like. So when you need to add and drop employees, do reporting, update your own kind of onboarding, things like that. So those are the two sides we're going to look at that. If that sounds good to you guys, we'll go ahead and get started.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, so real quick, Jill, are you guys currently using any sort of online enrollment platform so I can talk to that type of situation, or is this going to be kind of new?
This would be totally new for us.
Awesome. All right, no, perfect. Perfect thing to know up front. So let's do this. One of the cool things that's important to know as we go through this, there's a lot of work that everybody on the phone here that supports you and your company will be doing in advance. And part of that is building out all your benefits, your classes, divisions, anything that's applicable so that when an employee gets to the step that we're about to start with, all that pre-work is done. So we're going to do a lot of work getting that set up and working with you guys and knowing, we of course know all about your benefits and making sure everything's perfect. So we get to that point, we're going to kind of skip ahead right now to where all your employees have been loaded into the system, all their details, and so what they first are asked to do is they're going to get an email from the system, and all that work we did ahead of time gets them to where every employee is invited to go register into the Employee Navigator system. They only need a few bits of information, their social security, last four, their birth date, and the only other thing that is unique to them is there's going to be a unique identifier. All right, so that's just, probably be your company name. But they will get, every employee will be asked to register and they'll get their own personalized email. So today we are going to be a gentleman named Bill Cobb. All right, there's our company identifier. Last of his social. There he is. Okay, they'll have all their information other than what's provided in the email. Then they can go ahead and fill out their own username and password so they can manage it themselves. And then if there's ever a trouble, they can go forgot password and you don't have to complete that for them. Not adding work to your plate of having to manage username and passwords. Now let's see what I got here. May have broken my own rules. Oh yeah, exclamation point. Here it is. We should be in good shape now. All right. So what we have now, first thing I want to show you is a set of options, starting with how we like to interact with an employee. The first time that they've ever registered, we kind of got that unique opportunity to cover a couple of things with them. And I'm going to give you kind of 4 different types of options, knowing all of them can be customized. So the very first thing, welcome message, introduction to the platform, introduction to the company, maybe a custom message about your beliefs and benefits and what we provide for you, all that kind of good stuff. Up to you to be able to edit any way you want to. The next thing is, if we're going to be asking employees to electronically make some selections, then we need to have an electronic signature and consent that they sign. And it's the first place that we get to remind you that everything an employee does on an online system like this is time stamped and something we can report on and track and see at any point in the future. So when I hit this signed document, it's going to have my name and the date and time, so we always have that on file and on record. Next thing is we have a series of different federal forms and embedded documents that we can have right up in the beginning. What's cool about a W form is we don't necessarily often need the wet ink signature, but we do need the details of what's in there for payroll, HR, whatever it may be. So as an example of when we can electronically gather this very important information, this is how that can be done. This mentions This is a federal document. You can click here to see the full details and learn all you want about the exact document to either print and fill out or just complete the most important section on there is that. Fill out their information. I'll be a good employee and take out some extra so I don't have to pay. And then again, I've reviewed, I've acknowledged, and I'm submitting that. So now you're going to be able to have that information not only in the system, but also notified to you to be able to run a report at any point of all the W-4 information of every employee of your company. And that's about 2 clicks. And I'll show you that on the admin. But that is not just for W-2. It can be for a number of basic federal forms. So this last kind of I'm new, kind of getting started step, here's another one that we can do, employee contact or emergency contact. And that could be all sorts of things. We can create any custom form that you just want to make sure that you gather up front without missing it. Fill that out real quick. All right. So we finished what we call the getting started steps, and that is what we have an option of doing a number of things like that right in the beginning. But after that, we've landed in our sample company. And so just kind of getting a brief kind of walk around this dashboard as an employee, it's pretty easy to see that we're drawn to do 2 things. There are 3 required tasks right up in the beginning. It's also mentioned here as well that we'll look at next, but we also have the open enrollment period. And before we get to even those 2 major elements, we'll look around and see at the very top if they need to contact anybody at HR, that information will be up to date. As their own user usage, they can change their username and password. Nice feature is they can switch from English to Spanish. And not only does it change the site template, it also changes the names of the PDFs inside the system, which is kind of we work with a lot of different systems over the years, and not all of them will actually change file names like that. So that's very cool. We'll switch back to English in 1 click for the user, and then of course log out. After open enrollment's done and throughout the year, once they made their selection, all their benefits will be displayed, and I'll show you a little bit more after we go through that required task. But then there's also these personal information and resources that they're always available to use. You as an administrator can add news and articles at any point if you want to put updates or new documents that you want to make sure they see. That's always available to you as well. But for the most part, when we go through that, first thing we want to do is follow what an employee would. And first be these required tasks. So when we get inside this window, you see there's stuff we've kind of seen before. Those getting started tasks that we had examples of in the beginning. Now we have an example of something that's under the orientation type of subcategory. We can kind of name them that way. Here's confidentiality agreement. And then we also have things like policies and procedures. And so what's kind of neat about that, the perfect way to illustrate the way we can interact with documents and how we can create a compliance type of feel to these documents is if you ever wanted to ensure and have the ability to track that employees have read their company handbook and have it electronically acknowledged. This is the way we can do this. The cool thing to know, this doesn't have to be about just, this isn't an employee handbook module. We can do this for any PDF. So if it was cell phone policy or holiday schedule, anything like that, but you wanted employees to have to interact with it and you can track it, it can be done for any document. So the easy way to look at that is we're telling them how important this document is and that we want to make sure that it's clear and they've committed that they've read and reviewed it. And the only way we can do that is to make sure that once they first click and view it, and so if I click on that, you'll see our little sample handbook comes up. But when I close it or go back, you'll see now it has the please check that I have reviewed and required form. Checkbox and acknowledgement. So I can do this. Once again, there's my acknowledgement that I've done so for that document, easily able to be reported on, or spreadsheet of, hey, we got 72 employees, only 68 have completed the W-4 or the company handbook. I can easily follow up with them on that and keep track of those things. Any questions about what I just showed so far?
So Jeff, they actually have to open the document. They can't just hit the finish button and go on without reviewing the documents, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
Okay.
It wasn't even actually an option until they clicked on that handbook.
All right.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, great. All right, so that's kind of the onboarding is another way a lot of people are real popular saying about the whole, hey, new employee, you have to do all these things. We just saw the 2 easy ways from the once they first log on and fill out some information to the whatever you choose to be required can be done in there. And then, so that's all those that required tasks. Might have 10 things for them to complete. Maybe just has 1 or 2. All those are fully editable. And what's cool about that is to remind you guys that as we're looking through this, you know, we work really hard together to create the benefit side and the employee and the selections, but invariably it is your tool, and you are given full access to the HR aspect of Employee Navigator to use and leverage as much as you'd like. When we get into the admin, I'll show you the aspects where you pretty much work in, and there's actually a training and some guides that help you when you want to add new documents, but maybe you kind of forgot real quickly how to upload one or make it required. Besides all of our great support, you have all that stuff in your own hands. So be thinking, and I'm trying to cover some things that you truly have the opportunity to use if you'd like, but there are also things that you can say, it's not important right now, but I might add it next year. Something similar to that is a paid time off module that we have inside Employee Navigator that you're welcome to turn on and leverage for employees. So just as an example, if it's turned on, then I can click this button as an employee and log in and see the calendar, see all of our company holidays are already preloaded, the policy summary of our PTO. This is an example of our just kind of rolled together vacation, personal sick, kind of in one block one. You can split it out, and I'll show you that when we get in the admin. But here's our policy for paid time off, and it's associated with this, active, periodic accruals, started January 1. This system, admittedly, is very, very good for January 1, December 31. You can import previous information, but it works on the main calendar year. But after that, it lets you know it's weekly accrual, all these details you set up in advance. So now the employee can go back to the dashboard at any point and see how much they've accrued so far this year. I don't have any requests yet, so I'm going to go ahead and create one. So I'll just go ahead and do a vacation.
Time off right now.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. So just to give you an idea, so now as an employee, if that module is on, they can always see this. They can see anything pending. You can see that is pending approval. My reasoning, if that's important. But mostly as that changes, all that stuff is detailed in there. So let's we'll jump out of that and actually get back to our dashboard to get to the open enrollment section. So moving on to our world's longest open enrollment period, by the way. So don't let that throw you off. Normally the 30 days will be on there. So what we have, welcome Bill, we got time to go ahead and start our benefits. So the first thing we do, even before they get to choose their benefits, is another advantage for all of us in the admin side, is they need to either confirm or add any details about their profile. So if it's current employees, we'll probably get a census from you guys. We'll work together to do an upload where we probably have everything you might want inside the system up front. But new employees, rather than having to gather forms, you can literally, and I'll show you when we add an employee, you just put a few bits of information and then they get an email that lands them here to fill out all the things that they need to fill out for a new employee electronically. So if I just went here, you see my sample employee has a little bit about me, but not things like address and phone number. If I tried to hit save and continue, it'll blop and let you know what in red, hey, this is required. You can't skip until you do that. We can choose what's required or not. Most likely, phone and email would be required, but demo purposes, we're in there. So as an employee, I will just add all the details in there. And now I can skip ahead. Dependent, we got one dependent already preloaded. We'll probably do the same thing for you, but if there's a life event and they need to add it throughout the year, then they have this screen to go and add a dependent. Anytime you change or edit that, you actually get notified on the back end, even if it's nothing you need to do an action item, but you're notified anytime there's profile changes. So if you do need to update something else that's not part of the Employee Navigator system, which is pretty common, maybe it's payroll, somewhere else, you have a way to not only review it at any point, but notified when anything of those happens. So if an employee adds a dependent at any point, they go through the system to fill it out, and they hit save, and they're inside the system. So we are now able to go through our full benefit elections. One of the really strong points of Employee Navigator is keeping it simple. It's very clean, easy for them to see what step they need to do, choose their benefits, review them ahead of time, and move on. So first thing, starting from the top, who am I enrolling? Myself will always be elected in something like this, but then they have the spouse, and they can choose on it. You see there's no cost per pay period in this situation because it's only Mr. Bill, but if he adds his wife, then we start seeing the pay period, cost per pay period listed out. For sample sake, we did a dual option, so you can see if it was just one plan and all you saw was one plan, like you see on, say, a dental or vision, then all of them have the effective date, per pay period plan, but then you click on details, and this is a printable or viewable screen that has a great outline of, first, with the most common things that employees look for when making decisions. Cost, how much does it cost to go to the copay, to go to the doctor, what's our deductible. So we answer those high-level highlights. We also have the plan number and phone number, the summary, but then we scroll down and see a little bit more. Eligibility, termination, age limit, and then any document in support. So from the benefit highlight that has even more details to the SBD, SBC, and just any of those supporting documents we all get from carriers or maybe that you create for yourself is a great home for that inside the system that they can see at any time, print, and review. The neat part is as a dual option, you can see I can hit compare, and it puts side by side both those two plan highlights. So if you did have a high-low option or whatever it might be, or the consumer-driven healthcare or high deductible plans, whatever it might be, we have that compare plan anytime there's more than one. So as an employee, I'm going to go ahead and be a good employee and select the high plan. And you'll see now it's selected and allows me to save and continue for any plan that you want to track that people declined and for what reason. They'll always have the declination button there and options for them to choose. And once again, you can report and view all the medical declinations if you ever need that. So let me just go through the kind of the obvious parts. Dental, not much different. There's our single plan. I can do the details as well. And links and documents. I'm going to go ahead and choose spouse again. There's my cost per pay period. Select it. Move ahead until we get one that's a little bit different, starting with voluntary life or group life. So this one looks a little different because it's fully employer paid only for the employees. So we got a little bit of text that we can add, or we can customize it in any way we want to be more fitting for understanding this benefit. You see all they have to do is save and continue because it's available. Voluntary life is a little different, and that's, well, it's voluntary, and there may be a max before an E of I form is required. So we have this information put on there. They have a cool little slider bar that lets you see if you go above the approved limit. It'll let you know about that, and there'll be a form that they fill out. But on the easy side, they can select and see as their cost per pay period is going up as we have all the way up or down the sliding. So it's kind of a sample, let you know how the slider bar works. So I'll just leave it there, save and continue. Short-term disability, very similar. Ancillary plans, we can put those inside as well. There are certain carriers like Colonial and Unum that if those are your worksite marketing plans, they actually have a way to embed that inside the system. So when an employee gets to this step, they can actually click even though it feels like they're in the system, it is live inside Colonial or Unum's plan, so they can see multiple plans, they can see rates based on their age, whatever it might be, to be very specific, all within the system, so it feels like they're enrolling inside that worksite marketing carrier plan. If not, any plan works. So for us, putting it inside the system, viewing their documents, the details, and again, selecting. And just as kind of another not quite typical, I created an employee perk in our demo site, and that's simply if you have any of those other discounts or employee perks of some sort that you want to make sure that they see and know that they have available to you. A lot of times we have these things, but we only get to talk about it once a year. But if we can add it as part of the total employee benefit package, that's kind of cool to highlight that stuff. So there's no limit on what we call that. For the most part, this is where there'll be a label, a description. We can link a document like a prescription drug discount program. There could be the flyer that they print out, take them to their pharmacy, and use the program. Or gym membership, download this form, you get 10% off at 24-Hour Fitness. Anything like that. So that's another place you can be creative on just what else could we put on there. If it's a bike to work program, wellness program that you just want to make sure they have, and there's any form or details, or click here to get started, or to contact HR, all those things are available in there. So after that, there's that E of I form we talked about that we can make mandatory for them to fill out. But after that, we go through all their elections, and here they are on their enrollment summary that, once again, that's printable. They can acknowledge that, yep, I've made all my elections. They can wait to click this until, open enrollment draws near if they need to go home and work on that with a spouse. Obviously, an online system like this creates that benefit of being able to do it at work or at home with your spouse, anywhere where there's an internet connection. So that's kind of a good way to remember that you could fill this out, but then go and work on this at home. Confirm it. There's all of our elections. There is our cost per pay period. We work in advance, of course, of doing your payroll schedule and pay period, so we know how to answer that question automatically and accrue that, so there's no questions. And then you also see dependents listed at the bottom. Okay, questions on anything we've seen thus far?
Well, maybe this is it down the road, I don't know. Now, can we use any of this to help us with our ACA reporting for the following year?
Yes,
is there a way, like, do you guys offer that?
It does.
There's an ACA.
It does. We have an ACA tracking, and then we also have the upload your ACA full-time employee, ACA 1095, creating the mailers. All through that can be done through Employee Navigator.
I'm assuming that's an additional charge, right?
The tracking isn't. The only charge on that is the actual mailers, which, as you can imagine.
Okay.
And by the way, it's super reasonable. Everybody that used it this year, I think it was less than $5 per employee one time to do the mailers, postage, and sent out, and also creates the IRS version of it to be sent out to. So very, very, if you've looked in the other options, that's definitely not a high cost for that. But it does do that.
Oh, cool.
Great. Well, let's do, yeah, no question.
One question that, since we're on the home screen, those compliance documents, when you add a new document, can you set it up to send an email out to everyone automatically letting them know that it's there?
If you have everything in the system, I think there is broadcast emails we can do on that. I might look and see what the easiest way to do that, so they're notified to go on that. But you have the ability to do a broadcast email notifying of that. I don't think it's an automatic.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think it's an automatic, I upload a document, it spurs an email. I think it's a little bit more manual than that.
Okay, that's fine still, just, I wasn't.
Yeah, no, good thought. And I jotted that down just to make sure there may be another clever way to do that as well. Okay, well, let's do this. Without any other questions, let's do this. I'm going to log out, give you an idea of what it looks like on the back end. So
it's rather simple for a member to go do
yeah.
their election.
okay, so what we're looking at now, oh, sorry.
We don't.
No, this is for you to be able to manage the enrollment.
No, am I still going to have to?
You would still go through and load it to.
So it's really only automatic up front. It's not a 360. Like it's like a 180 where they do it, and I still have to take the information and transfer that over to Blue Cross.
Right.
Or so like if someone enrolls, it's not going to automatically add them to the system. I have to still take their information, go on the Blue Cross website and see that.
Correct. Unless there's
Does it talk still? So those two systems don't talk.
Correct.
Yeah. So
Jeff, do you have 834s or any type of that attached to this?
No, Employee Navigator does a couple things. It's after open enrollment, we can take all those elections and selections and deliver those to the carriers in one batch. Ongoing, without that carrier 834 EDI connectivity, then it is all paperless to an employee. And then as you get it from the HR, whoever manages the adds and drops will just take the detail from the system and complete it as they're used to doing currently. Which I think is what Jill, you were just saying, is all the pre stuff is done, paperless to employee, and then you might go to the carrier portal to add a new hire.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. And by the way, what is interesting about this is new improvements on the data feed. See, you can see all these giving you an idea of what's coming up. The Cobra carrier, which would be the EDI feeds, cafeteria. These will be options within the next year to 18 months. So the day of not saying it's very strong in EDI is not going to be very long. But it's a much bigger animal, as you guys probably know, of going directly into the carrier systems, and it's also very, very costly and time consuming. So right now it doesn't do that, but they're building functionality for that in the future. So almost to your point, so what you'll use this system for, you'll get your own login. There'll probably be a few less buttons. This is kind of my back end on that, but we get you access to everything that you need to mess with. For instance, you'll spend most of your time on the employee tab, similar to the helpful tools, and adding and editing employees. That kind of gets you to the employee tab. So my Mr. Cobb I was just working on, you can see there's task, some incomplete ones for you as the HR, and you click on those to get to them. All their profile information, their benefits. After open enrollment, this would be a lot more, this would be actually fleshed out. You can see it's in the enrollment period. But as an employee, you go through, or as an admin, you can go view and edit any employee details, or you can go add an employee, which is a big one. This is where you just fill out a few bits of information to get to the screen that says send email, and it gets you all the way back to where we started from today. That employee got the same email with their same details that lets them then go and complete their full details and their benefits and their elections. So adding an employee is very smooth when you go through that system, and then you'll be notified when they're done to do any other back-end admin you need to do where you pull those details out of Employee Navigator. If you need to term an employee, same kind of aspect. Find the employee and choose any of these added. There's your ACA, PTO, these different modules they have the ability to use, or there's our terminate an employee. So most of the time, adding, dropping employees and managing that is your first step, or first kind of way you interact with the system. The other thing that most people do is use and utilize the reporting feature. So a system like this has a lot of pre-built templates to get you started. So there's that payroll, all those details that you can click on there and be able to see, choose all the employees, all their details, print it, download it to Excel. And this is kind of a canned one. So if you ever want to create your own, and then you go and do a column-based report, ad hoc type of report. Fill out all the details you would like to gather. If it's employee-based or enrollment-based on their plans, you just create all the fields, you view it, and then if it's something you think you're going to use over and over, you simply save it, and you start creating your own little library of my reports. So there are a lot of starter reports, as you can imagine, from haven't started, not completed, open enrollments, declination enrollments, all the things that we talked about, all sorts of details, or create your own. So I would say most realistically, people start with some of these, but then as they figure out what fits them perfectly, they create their own custom reports and use those over and over. So it becomes essentially a 1 or 2 click process once you have your own custom reports in there. Other things that you have available to you is the benefits. For the most part, we kind of gray out, so you don't have to worry about adding all the classes, all the things that took us to build the benefit plan. But the documents is also super important. This is where you can go and create, hey, I have an additional form, I have an additional document that may be benefit related. It might be employee homepage. It might be whatever the case may be. You go and add a document and let you drag and drop, describe it, who's viewable. So if we have any classes, by the way, if you have employees separated, we can actually go everybody or separated by class. Here's our full-time demo or part-time. We can choose that if that's applicable to you guys. There is setting up classes in the beginning sometimes, trickles down to, hey, I have this document, but it only needs to be seen by certain employees. Well, you've already got them organized and to be able to do that. And you can see the compliance documents. You just designate these things any way you'd like to as you add documents so that we know how they need to be interacted with. And that's kind of where this guide comes in. At any point within the system, not so much another separate support site besides our help to support you. A lot of people, when you take ownership of it, they want to make sure they use the tools that are kind of not just basics. I want to go and change the email templates that the employees get when I give their first time going into the system, enrollment confirmation or welcome. These are all the things that you can go to town with of customizing and creating and making your own. So we always highlight, and when the time comes where if this is a good fit for you, we build it out, then we'll have another call like this where we go over now it's your site. Here's all your benefits and employees. Let's remind you about the report tab, the settings, documents, and things like the guide. So trying not to give you too much on the first one when we're trying to look at just how it can work. I won't go too much deeper than that other than just to remind you we'll spend a little bit more time on the practical side if it ever is a system you go live with. So I think we covered everything I wanted to show you on the high level. What kind of additional questions do we have? If any.
Oh. I think that's it.
I like to hope.
You answered a lot of my questions that I had throughout it. So
I like to hope that the silence is shock and awe, and that's what we like to feel. Mostly because webinars, you actually have no idea. So no, I hope we covered it, and not that you ever have an end date of asking questions, but